The Sunbelt title is up for grabs. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their Monday. We're already on to Tuesday. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, we will obviously get to what I think is now a wide open Sunbelt championship race. We will get to players leaving before the season ends. It's a little bit troubling. And then you have the weekend hoops wrap up. And we'll start to look ahead to hoops this week as well. But obviously, the Cajuns losing to South Alabama opens it up a little bit, right? Troy still has to beat the Cajuns to really make my head hurt with all those different tiebreakers. And Marshall looks really good. And you have JMU, who's still in the race. And then again, Georgia Southern is still in the race. So it seems to be wide open. Last week, it seemed to be the championship's going to go through Lafayette, and you're going to have to take on the Cajuns. All right. Now, Chandler Fields is the quarterback. Not that he's bad. Chandler Fields is about as good as backup quarterback as there is in the conference, right? He led them to 2 touchdowns after they couldn't put anything on the board in the first half and almost brought them all the way back. But nonetheless, he is the backup quarterback. You have Martin. May still be out. You have the right tackle. Jackson is out for Troy. Skipper is still out. Zylan Perry is hopeful to return, and the backup Demery cornerback is out with an illness. So last week you had the Cajuns in charge. They got a 2-game lead. Now they don't. You had Georgia Southern on top of Marshall, and they were actually tied, but because Georgia Southern won or Marshall lost, as some people may agree with, that Georgia Southern was on top. But now Georgia Southern has 2 losses, and Marshall has just the one to Georgia Southern. But you got to think I happen to think it is wide open. This ball game, Cajuns are favored by 12 against Troy. Really early line. Seems like a lot, all right? It seems like a lot. That would be, if Ben Woldridge was the quarterback, then I'd say, sure, probably 2 touchdown ball games. But the Cajuns are taking on Troy. James Madison is taking on App State. That's only a 7.5-point line. JMU is at App State. You have Arkansas State -3. Seems like not very much at home against Monroe. That's interesting. Coastal Carolina is actually a 2-point favorite against Georgia Southern. You would think a loss would knock Georgia Southern out unless somehow Old Dominion beats Marshall to keep things all knotted up. Texas State, almost a 3-score, technically a 3-score favorite, 19.5 points over Georgia State this weekend. So they are a heavy favorite. So checking out those standings, right? And again, trying not to make the head hurt. The Cajuns, technically, again, they got 3 teams that are tied at 4-2. They have Texas State second at the standings I'm looking at. Arkansas State is third, and South Alabama is fourth. Now, South Alabama has lost to Arkansas State, so they would be behind it. Texas State has also beaten Arkansas State pretty badly, but South Alabama has beaten the Cajuns, and South Alabama and Texas State still have to play. That's the final game of the regular season for both those teams. That game is in Mobile. Then you go to the East. Marshall leads Georgia Southern by that 1 ball game. James Madison is 4-2. Boy, what happens if Old Dominion wins? They go to 4-3. James Madison loses to App. I can't imagine that being the case. Then you'd have to have Georgia Southern lose at Coastal. And then you'd have, it'd still be Marshall would be 5-2. Georgia Southern would be 4-3. James Madison would be 4-3. And Old Dominion would be 4-3. So you'd have these teams all knotted up, kind of like the West is now, but still Marshall with a 1 cushion lead in that case. But obviously, the West is looking for Troy to come up with a big win, and then everybody could be 5-2 heading into the final weekend of the year. If somehow Troy beats the Cajuns would drop to 5-2. Texas State, huge favorites over Georgia State, as we said. South Alabama's going to Southern Miss. That should be a win. And Arkansas State, that small favorite against Monroe. So, again, right now, the Cajuns have the advantage and Marshall has the advantage, but it is up for grabs. I think any one of those teams could end up winning it, all right? Marshall going to ODU. Is that a for sure thing? ODU gave JMU all they could handle. And JMU comes away with a 3-point win over Old Dominion, right? South Alabama, again, I got Greg. He's a big supporter of mine since my days hosting Sports Talk in Mobile. And he's like, I don't understand this South Alabama team from week to week. They're so different. And I was like, well, what about half to half, right? They led 24-3 at half. And they didn't score in the second half against the Cajuns. They still won, but it was a 24-3 lead. And they had to prevent, and talking about a game of inches, they had to prevent Chandler Fields from getting into the end zone less than a foot, right? Now, there was plenty of time, I should mention, there was plenty of time for South Alabama to get a score, but they hadn't scored all second half. They got shut out in the second half. So it can be it's not even week to week, it can be half to half the way teams play. But there's no reason why that this is all up for grabs. And again, the head's going to hurt. All right, if we do have these tiebreakers, we'll certainly look into it. If it does happen that Troy beats the Cajuns and the rest of the teams win and everybody's 5-2, we'll look into it. Absolutely. How's that going to be, right? Because the Cajuns have wins over Texas State and Arkansas State, but not one over South. South Alabama has lost to Arkansas State and still have to play Texas State. South Alabama did beat Troy in there. And then you got to go to the other side. Georgia Southern beat JMU. Georgia Southern beat Marshall. And we'll see what happens with ODU. So I happen to think JMU, Marshall, Georgia Southern, all in the East have a shot at it. I think ODU, a little bit of a long shot. Whereas, the Cajuns have, they're still in control and they're a big favorite against, Troy. They will be a big favorite against ULM on the road. They certainly, are in charge in the West, but things changed in a big way from last Monday to this Monday. And the Cajuns are banged up, going with their backup quarterback. They do have a bunch of injuries all over the place. And we shall see. Certainly, Texas State jumping in the river, getting, qualifying for a bowl game. They're looking at it. Why not us? The thing is, you got to get them all in a tiebreaker because it's going to be different. It can't be just you and the Cajuns in the tiebreaker because the Cajuns are going to take that tiebreaker. But once you start getting 3 and 4 teams into the tiebreaker, that's when Schultz's head hurts. That's when it's like, all right, I've had enough. So we'll figure that out later on. But I do happen to think it's up for grabs. Again, a week ago, it looked like Georgia Southern and the Cajuns were in charge, although not a whole lot of room for Georgia Southern to slip, and we saw what happened. Whereas the Cajuns still had a little room to breathe, and they still lead the Sunbelt West. But they are a banged-up team. They need to beat Troy in the worst of ways. All right, let's take a timeout. I do want to we're going to talk about players leaving before the season ends, whether it was their decision or not. We don't always know that to be the case. And we'll get to the weekend hoops wrap-up after we talk about Roy and game time. All right, listen up, Sunbelt fans, and specifically Troy Trojans fans. You need to download the Roy app. You've heard us talk about Roy this season and how they are revolutionizing the NIL industry. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And here's what I absolutely love about Roy. You get your money back if that player transfers. Roy is helping us keep our team intact, and it's actually good for the game long term. Okay, Troy's quarterback, Matthew Caldwell had an enormous ball game. 26 out of 32, 2 touchdowns in the air, threw for 288 yards. And the Trojans' 28-20 victory over Georgia Southern. That wasn't all he did. Although he only rushed for 13 yards, he still ran for 2 more touchdowns. So Caldwell was responsible for all 4 scores in the Trojans' 8-point victory over Georgia Southern. You can show your support for Matthew Caldwell by depositing a little appreciation on that player's account. To do that, download the Roy app. You can see where the logo looks like if you're watching this on YouTube, or go join Roy.com. Now let's spotlight that Roy Locked Player of the Week. As I mentioned, it's Matthew Caldwell for putting up a huge weekend, leading Troy to their 2nd consecutive victory. We're going to throw some money into his account on Roy. Every contribution counts. 10, 20 bucks, it all adds up. It's going to help your favorite players stay put. Join me and show some love for Matthew Caldwell from Troy. Download the Roy app and go join Roy.com today. Use promo code LOCKEDON. Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players, change the game. And game time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You get those priority Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All in pricing. You can toggle this feature. It shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And you get to see where you're sitting, get that panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and you get that lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Don't forget about that Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, welcome back to Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Little bit of a delay, a little bit of a technical difficulty last night, wearing the same sweater just to have a little bit of sameness. But I recorded the second and third segments last night with no audio. So, and by the time I realized that, I had already taken my melatonin, and so I wasn't going to make it through. So here are the second and third segments. We talked about Sunbelt title is up for grabs, and I thoroughly believe that. I think a half a dozen teams can possibly win that, and it's going to be up to Troy to make that happen, or the Cajuns losing, whichever way you want to look at it. And then we will get to the weekend hoops update, including Monday's action, which is now final since last night. But I did want to talk about the players leaving before the season ends, and we're going to need some guardrails because, and I know what Dexter Williams did, and I don't really have a problem with what he did, but I kind of do. He's looking to play, and if he's stuck behind J.C. French, and in a couple of games, I'll play J.C. French, and still not replacing J.C. French, he needs to find a place that he can go play. Okay. The problem with that is that 4-game rule for redshirting really wasn't for you to show your skills that you can play somewhere else. It was to get your feet wet without holding it against you if someone gets banged up for a couple of games, right? At one point in time, the bowl games counted against that. Now it doesn't. Now you can play 4 games in the regular season. If the senior gets banged up at the end, or is transferring, or is going to not play in the bowl game because he doesn't want to, he's going to go pro, whatever the case is, the bowl game doesn't count. Now it's to showcase your skills and to move on. And I don't think that's fair to anybody, right? It may be fair to the player, but it's certainly not fair to the school, and certainly doesn't help out the team. And I am all for the players cashing in. I really am, right? It has been one way for the better part of, are we at 150 years when Rutgers and Princeton started, right? And, this is on the coaches to begin with, because the coaches decided that they were worth more, and the schools decided the coaches were worth more, and they get paid millions of dollars, whereas yes, the students get a good education if they so choose to take advantage of that, and a lot of their costs are picked up with that. Not all of it. And it should also be noted that for a long time, and I think this has changed recently, that scholarships were a 1-year renewable contract. So that hurts the players if the forget the portal. When the new coach comes in, for whatever reason, one coach wins a bunch of games, gets another job, or another coach gets fired, whatever the case is, and then he doesn't have to renew the scholarship for the players. And that's not fair, right? Now the kids should have an opportunity to transfer if the coach isn't there. That could be a one-time deal. But we do need to get to a spot where we do have guardrails, okay? And, pro sports have guardrails. There is a time for free agency. Is there tampering? Probably. In the NBA, most definitely. Maybe even in the NFL, okay? Baseball, there is no salary cap. And so, they were talking about it in the World Series about Juan Soto. And then he's in the clubhouse after the Yankees lose, open for business, highest bidder, come get me. But we know when that's going to happen, right? The Yankees have to make a qualifying offer. They do that. That's going to be turned down, and he's going to hit free agency. All right, but everybody knows that. Here, you have 3 different ways, right? You get into the portal after the season. You can get into the portal after the spring, and now you could start to redshirt after fall practice, and now you can redshirt during the season. And there's no way to build a program. It's almost year after year after year. It's a new thing, and there's no way to build this, right? I think Brian Kelly came out and said, we have to be able to recruit high school kids. We just can't fill the holes with portal guys because a lot of times these portal guys, you're going to be lucky to get the 1 year out of it, and you don't know what kind of person they are, how hard they work. You're seeing the statistics in the film. You don't have a whole lot of time to talk to them, right? When you're recruiting these kids, and now these kids are getting recruited from their sophomore years on, you're getting to know the kid at least a little bit, right? I'm sure if you're talking to them all the time when you can, you're getting to know the kid over 2-3 years, and you see him grow up, you see him mature. It's one of those things where you are building a relationship, whereas there's no relationship built when you're transfer portal, right? Those are mercenaries, for lack of a better term, coming to your school, right? And we have guys, again, I don't know the details of all of these players. Obviously, we know Dexter Williams going to redshirt, go into the portal. Isaac Walker from Georgia Southern, he's left the team, according to Josh Aubrey, beat writer for Georgia Southern. Was that a mutual thing? Was that his own deal? Did the team kick him off? And then Jack Lang left Southern Miss. I don't know if that's an injury thing or something like that. Why are you leaving for two games? You can't practice for 2 more weeks. I mean, that's like Rudy quitting because he didn't make the travel squad or didn't make the team as a walk-on. You got 1 more week. What are you doing, right? And again, I don't know all of these situations, but somewhere along the way, the player has to take responsibility to be with the team for the season, and the team has to commit for the player for the season, and maybe even longer. And so somewhere along the way, we are going to get guardrails. It is, right? I said for the first 150 years of college football, it's gone in totally one direction, and now it has swung completely in the other direction. And somewhere we got to meet in the middle. And so, you're going to get 1 shot, all right, to transfer. You can't have 2, all right, and certainly not 3. You can't do it whenever, right? You're going to do it, after the season. You're going to do it after spring, and then you're going to do it after fall. You're going to redshirt. I'm just going to sit out. Somewhere along the way, you can't really do that, right? You need to be able to build a program, all right? And it shouldn't be. It has been a minor league, and the NFL and college football have been getting away with that forever, making millions and millions of dollars. But somewhere along the way, when you commit to the team for a year, you need to do that. All right. Now, Dexter Williams, I know he wants to showcase his talent. He's going to go play. He wants to play, right? And if what he showed to Georgia Southern wasn't good enough for him to start, obviously he wasn't going to start the next year. It would appear, right? And so he's going to move on. But somewhere along the way, we need it to where you get 1 shot to transfer, whether that's after the season All right. You want to be there for spring ball, then you're there. All right. If it doesn't work out, you're there for a year. All right. If you want to transfer after that, maybe you have to sit out a year, whatever the case is. There needs to be it can't be a free for all every year, right? Like football is different, but basketball, the last thing that the players want is a free for all every year. All right. The players want the guaranteed money. They don't want free agency every year. All right. Now you get a lot of these young guys who outplay their contracts and they want to raise fast. And depending on how far they get a little bit more money. But for the most part, unless you're going to or winning the Super Bowl, you don't get much of a raise. Did Brock Purdy's contract move up? I don't know. Right. Like, I don't know. Brady's did after he got the Super Bowl championship, but that's winning the Super Bowl. So somewhere along the way, we're going to have to get these guardrails in to where if you're there for the play, if the players are there for you, they're there for the season. All right. And they can transfer out one time. That's it. The other thing for the red shirting, what I mentioned, if you play in 4 games and you red shirt, that's good for the team you're with. You do that to transfer, I'm going to say that's going to be used against you. All right. That's going to be held against you as a year of eligibility. You've lost your eligibility if you're transferring after playing 4 ball games. Doesn't hurt you if you stay with your team. It's going to hurt you if you go to a different team. Sort of like the NBA and the bird rules, right? You can get much more from your team, right? Because the idea is that they want you to stay. The other teams can't offer you nearly as much. All right. Although at some point at that level, it doesn't really matter with the money being spent. But that would be my suggestion, that you get the 4 games to redshirt and you get that year of eligibility. If you stay, you lose that year of eligibility if you do transfer out. That's just my suggestion. And somewhere along the way, we're going to have a negotiated deal where, players are committed for a certain period of time, and they only really get one chance to transfer out. All right, let's take a timeout. We had a little bit of college hoops. I had a lot of college hoops this weekend in the Sunbelt. We'll go over that. We don't have that many Power 5 teams. I think there's 2 games this weekend coming up. But let's recap the Sunbelt hoops action right after I tell you about Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. I actually might. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get a wireless deal for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it really is easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with a high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's check out the basketball from this weekend. We're always so concerned with Sunbelt football. Let's check out what happened in basketball-wise. It was not a great week for Sunbelt hoops, that's for sure. Let's go back to Friday. A couple of ball games on Friday. Old Dominion, Mike Jones gets his first win, coaching his former squad, and he beats Old Dominion beats Maryland Eastern Shore 73-71. Old Dominion improves to 1-3. Georgia Southern in the Rock Hill Classic gets a win. They beat North Carolina Central 80-75. Georgia Southern is 3-1. That gets better. We go to Saturday, and Georgia Southern beats Winthrop 89-87. Remember, they're 4-1. They started out 0-12 last year. They won 4 out of their first 5 ball games. Charlie Henry doing a great job there at Georgia Southern. South Alabama gets a win over Mercer 75-66. So they've won a couple in a row. Arkansas State improves to 3-1 with a win over Stephen F. Austin 59-49. Texas State drops one on the road to Abilene Christian 72-60. They're now 2-2. Marshall over Louisville's own Bellarmine 83-62. And Townsend 67-63 over James Madison. All of a sudden, James Madison has lost a couple in a row. On Sunday, a couple of ball games. Georgia Southern loses in the championship of the Rock Hill Classic. They fall to William and Mary 102-87. Georgia Southern can put up some points. They do have some defensive issues right now. Jacksonville State beats Coastal Carolina. Coastal is 1-3 to start the season. Jacksonville State 71-53. And Troy takes it on the chin to Oregon 82-61. Troy got off to a good start, looked pretty good, looked good-ish in the first half against Arkansas, but has not been the same since. And on a Monday, South Alabama played Crosstown School Spring Hill 95-61. Georgia State over Toccoa Falls 106-66. And Monroe took it on the chin to Southeastern 70-67. They were down by 10 at half and made a good run, but Monroe falls to 2-4. Think we have to go all the way to Friday to find a Power 5 team. Let's see here. Georgia State, should mention, is playing North Carolina Central. All right, same team that Georgia Southern played. And the Cajuns are actually taking on Liberty in the Bahamas in the Paradise Jam. Liberty off to a 4-1 start. I guess we have to go to Saturday, because I think Marshall is playing Purdue. They are. Purdue just took down number 2 Alabama at home. Marshall 3-1 going into Purdue, taking on the number 6 Boilermakers. And then on Sunday, this weekend, we do get Boston College taking on Old Dominion. All right. So otherwise, it's a bunch of warm-ups, and we're getting to those holiday tournaments as we see fit. So we'll keep it up with the hoops. I'm not sure who's good and who's bad yet. We know Arkansas State's pretty good. Marshall is off to not a bad start. The Cajuns are banged up. It's not going to be a good year for the Cajuns, and because Richie Riley always has a bunch of transfers. That's the way he operates, and that's been long before the transfer portal is. It takes a month for him to figure out what he has, and it takes a month usually for the players to figure out what they are as well. So what Richie Riley and his South Alabama Jaguars are in November, December is usually not the case in March. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. All right. We are up to 1,627 subscribers. Really appreciate that. Maybe I need a little graphic push for 2025. For 2025. It's going to be a long shot. I understand that. Still not going to stop me from asking for it. So we're still looking for to get to 2,025 subscribers, which for Lockdown Sunbelt is pretty good. We understand where we are in the world, and we have a passionate fan base. It may not be the biggest, but we're doing pretty well. So I appreciate all of your support. Basketball is coming up, and then we get softball and baseball, and those are obviously big sports in the Sunbelt. So appreciate everybody. Please share and like the videos on YouTube, Facebook, and so on. So I appreciate everybody's support. All right. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll talk to you again on Wednesday. You've been watching Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day,